Hi, I'm Dan Kenny with Integrity Pictures, Wisdom and Healing Through Stories. This is a historic moment. This is the very first show of a nation divided, a conversation with Democrats and Republicans. So why did I start this? Why am I starting this program? I was working on a book called We Can All Make America Great Again. And I started noticing things about our country in my research. First of all, this program and that book are for you regardless of your political party, regardless of your race, your sex, your religion, your philosophical background. One qualification you need is you need to be a human being. That's the only qualification you have. Now, I was noticing something when I was thinking about starting this project. I was noticing that America was not made great by what group we identify with. America was not made great by how well we can insult people who differ from us. America was made great by our virtues. So with my book, We Can All Make America Great Again, I'm starting to quote from people like Ben Franklin, George Washington, Sojourner Truth, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King. And what these and other Americans all had in common was they talked about how virtue is what made America great. So with all the different Americans who have brought us wisdom, I have a quote from a fellow American who shared such wisdom for us, Groucho Marx. He said, and this is a summary of the whole problem in the United States, politics is the art of looking for trouble, finding it everywhere, diagnosing it incorrectly, and applying the wrong remedies. I'm going to turn to my first guest on my first show, John.
Hi.
And I'm going to ask you a question. Are you ready?
Yes.
Is the United States still a city on a hill? Is the United States an ideal community? And then explain your answer.
Well, I believe it is. I do believe we are a city or a country on a hill. I believe there's a lot of good qualities here in this country, and I do believe that there are some ways in which our country could improve as well.
Okay. What is it about our country that makes it an ideal community?
I believe that we have a good education system. I believe a lot of people here are well educated in comparison to, let's say, third world countries. And I believe that we have a lot of opportunity here in this country that unfortunately a lot of countries don't have.
Okay. Tell me some ways that we're not an ideal community, some things that are disturbing.
Well, one article that I recently read about in the news recently said that we have in this country more people in prison than China and India combined. And that is not per capita, that is quantity, that is a lot of people. And I believe that there could be possibly other programs that people could enter so that tax-paying people doesn't have to, the money doesn't have to go into, keeping prisons open and stuff. I also believe homelessness is an issue. It's my understanding that homelessness is actually illegal in some countries, particularly Europe. And a recent study has found that it is actually cheaper to house a homeless person than it is to deal with them on the streets.
Wow. How can we deal with this problem of homelessness? What would be your suggestion?
Well, in my opinion, I think one way in which we could deal with it is to provide houses for them. I believe there was one state, I can't remember which state it was, where they did a study and they found it's actually cheaper to literally give keys to a homeless person on the street and say, here's where you live now.
That's awesome. Have you heard of Mary's Place in Minneapolis?
Yes, I have.
Yes, I've met her. They do some housing for temporary housing for homeless people. We have a new guest, James McKeague. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
Now, my first question, is the United States an ideal community? Is the United States a city on a hill?
I would say yes. America is still a city on a hill, given its shadow, the kind of shadow it casts on other nations, and particularly, again, I have an external perspective, coming from an developing country and being involved in politics and public affairs and international affairs. I really see America being a city on a hill, and primarily because of its influence, its innovation. Take for example Facebook. Take for example the internet. These are things that clearly show you what America is, and how it can influence the world.
How can we make this a better country?
Being a student at the University of Minnesota, I have a perspective that I can say that I come with from Kenya, and that will actually shed some different kind of idea on how we see America. We see America as a city where usually literally on a hill, because it's things that happen in the US have implications to like other countries, and mainly in the developing world, and actually even in Europe and other countries. And for instance, the entertainment industry, it's very hard to differentiate nowadays if you come to the streets of Nairobi and you meet a student from a university, the way they dress, the way they speak, you might think they have already been in the US, but they have not. So it shows you some aspects of how the US influences the world, and that is just basically on a street level. But when you look at the politics and the policies of a nation, they have implications, but they are made here. The theories come from here, and so we actually apply them on the other side of the world. So America actually sheds light to many of the things that we do as countries out there. So when we look at America, we see like this great city, this great country, that has a very huge shadow on other countries. Yeah.
President Obama's father was from Kenya. How did people in Kenya feel about that?
Excited. Particularly, they feel like we are represented. More so, it gives us a sense of pride to know you can be anything that you set your heart to be. And I don't want to go to the ethnic side of it, because then it brings a lot of differences in the country, and also we've seen that between the communities, and it's particularly from the community that President Obama's father comes from. So when we go to the grassroots, you see that there's divisions within the ethnic communities. But in general, we really feel like, you can do anything you set your heart to do. You can become anyone. So it's a sense of pride in our hearts to know that Obama has some roots from Kenya, and
And that makes a bigger connection between the United States and Kenya.
Yes, and we hope that there will be we hoped with the President Obama coming into power that there will be more stronger ties between our country and the United States. We'll have more business dealings, trading. So.
Specifically, how has the United States influenced Kenya? What about our culture really do Kenyans look up to and want to adopt?
I would say mainly the economic standing, which it's a little bit higher up for something that we will target as a country. But I will see Kenya trying to be more like America in terms of organization, in terms of how institutions function, and how policy actually influences the lifestyles of the people to an extent that it makes America a country that many people are trying to, to come out like from the developing world into America. They want to really go to the US. And the queues are, if you've been to Kenya, you'll see, or to other countries in Africa, you'll see like the queues in the embassies. You know, they're trying to get that visa to come to the United States, because there's this idea that they have, America is the place to be. Everything is in order. The lifestyle, the institutions are working. There is security. There is, the economy is working. You can get a job easily, and you can get pay that it's at a certain level. So there's that idea and that notion that America is a great country, and we can see it as, through Hollywood especially. You see how the movies are set up, and it actually sells as a kind of an American that is pretty much very organized, And for me, coming from the developing world and coming here and seeing it, it's just like being in a movie, because it's actually the same. The buildings are as neat as I see them. The lighting, the police, the police vehicles. It will be very different when you're in a developing country and you see sometimes the police vehicles are not even there at all. So, yeah. So
let me move on to another question. Are we in this country all considered equal, or do we consider some people as us and others as them? And then how do we label these groups?
Well, we have still have a lot of racism in this country, not just between white people and black people, but even Native Americans and other races too. Not to mention the LGBT community, in which has also been prominent in the news lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we remedy that? What should we do to remedy that situation?
I think that, first of all, we need to get along. First of all, we need to acknowledge that people come from different backgrounds, and they have, there's going to be differences. This is a free country, and we need to acknowledge that these differences in individuals exist.
Yeah. What do you think about the police and some of our African American communities, and what do you think on those issues?
Well, there's been a lot of controversy in the news lately about incidents, people being shot or arrested for no apparent reason. A lot of people are even unarmed. But I do believe there's a lot of good going on, because you see, these are isolated incidences. And I do believe that there's a lot of good that is going on behind the scenes that we aren't actually informed of on the news on a daily basis.
Yeah, something we need to think about. I have an African American friend of mine who has diabetes, and he was treated by a police officer as if he was drunk, and treated rather roughly. Mm-hmm. And so we should all be under the law. We should all be, police should also be held accountable for what they do. So tell us, what do you think about different communities in the United States and their relationship with the police? How can that be improved?
And thank you so much for that. I would like actually to follow up on what John had spoken about, and he actually, there's this idea that, and actually it's clear, we have these specific incidents that have actually been in the media about police brutality. We cannot say it is not there. It is there. But even when we are thinking about this question, we have to look at the individuals, the police themselves. They are what we call the street level bureaucrats. They are actually out there in the field applying the law, and every scenario and every situation is different. And you should understand that they are also individuals, and they have issues as individuals too. Although they have been trained to work, but in these circumstances, but every circumstance they find themselves is very specific. So I think we should stretch out a hand of understanding of where they are coming from. And I will not neglect to say that the idea that I would mainly propose will be, or what I've heard a lot being spoken about, is de-escalation, and mainly training being put in that regard to help the police officers be able to focus more on de-escalating scenarios rather than being very confrontational, which then ends up with what we see, death a lot and stuff like that. So I feel, one, we should understand that policemen are individuals and they are actually operating in some very strenuous contexts, and this has to be understood too. But two, we also have to see how far can police training go to help the situation, and what approaches can they take when they are dealing with people, remembering that both this confrontation involves people. And as you started in this show, it's about the people. We should keep it at that, about the people. Yeah, thank you.
So working on calming it down.
Calming it down, de-escalating it.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I've also heard some communities are getting, where the police and the community, they're becoming more involved just as regular citizens together, getting to know one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we need it. We need the police, and if I can put another perspective, like an international perspective coming from Kenya, you see, when you find like an institution of maybe the police is not really working, the institution is failing the citizens, it's not really operational, you can say, you can call the police officer and say, oh, I have a problem in my neighborhood, but it will, maybe a police officer will respond to you, we don't have fuel for the car, we can't be there. And coming here in the United States and seeing the response, the police are all over, it creates a sense of security. You can do your business. You can be comfortable in living in different neighborhoods. The country can actually develop. People can freely, express themselves in different kinds of employments. You're not scared that, oh, today I will start this business, somebody will come and rob me and take everything that I've been working or I've been working for. But then they create that sense of security, and that is something we cannot do without. No matter how we feel like the police are not on our side or something like that, we should find a means or a place where we can come together. We can provide a meeting place where we can come together and actually solve these issues, because we need each other. The police need us because we actually are the ones who are being protected. At the same time, we need them because they provide that sense of knowing that we can do our businesses and live our livelihoods the way we want.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So coming to the United States, did you have your expectations met? Were you excited to come here? Did it live up to what you thought it would be?
Yeah. When I came here, my expectations were met far and above what I had imagined. You usually, until you see something, then you really know this is actually what I had signed in for, and actually I got much more than I thought I would. And yeah, I would say I got much more than I imagined I would get, coming all the way, and it was worth it. It was worth it.
Are there any disappointments?
I would say being a Christian, that is something that again might be a little bit of a disappointment, to see the turn that the country is taking to some extent, and this can be very controversial if we talk about it, but I feel like America has also been very instrumental in spreading the message of Christ to other nations through missionary work and missionary activities. And take, for example, a mission organization called Duty the Mission. It's almost in every country in the world. And these people who started it, Lauren, he's from America. And this is just one of the organizations through which I came to know Christ. And it's not only missionary activities, but we have funding, we have clothes being given to missionaries and being donated, money being donated to support kids in schools. Talk about World Vision, and there are many organizations, charity organizations that are out there actually being specifically funded from the United States. And this is across the whole, all the continents, almost in all the continents of the world. Something about America is happening, an American is giving something to someone somewhere. So influencing somebody's life, influencing somebody's future, influencing somebody's family, yeah.
So this generally the United States you think is an ideal community?
I will see that, but then when you ask the question concerning like, are there some things that make me feel as if I feel like I'm not really satisfied, or I feel like can be done a little bit different, it's when I see America kind of moving away from that idea of in God we trust, so that might be my only might be the only downside I will see. Yeah.
So in God we trust. When you were in Kenya, did you see America, the United States, as a place that's under God, that's a people that trust in God?
Yeah, this is the general perspective, I would say. If you're looking at America from an international perspective, most nations look at America and they say it's a Christian nation, and when we look back at September 11, people thought, and people out there were saying, America is attacked because it's a Christian nation. It represents a certain ideology about Christianity, about fearing God, about an identity with Christ. So those things are happening against America simply because it is this great light that stands for a certain way of living, and that is a Christian way of living. So that is the general idea. America is a Christian nation and nothing less.
So have we turned away from that a bit, or?
Yeah, you can
How?
see it.
How?
You can see it by the different, like let's say the Bible has different. I will say, I will not call it mostly Christianity. I will not see it as a religion, as per se. I will say it's a kind of a lifestyle that we are called to live in, and this lifestyle has kind of laws, ways to live and things to do and not to do. And so when you see movements that have a different perspective, like the LGBT movement that is coming up and is actually picking pace, and people are actually following it a lot and actually advocating for it from different corners of the society. And this is not only the generation that is, let me say, the baby boomer generation really didn't have much of that, but the new generation that is coming up, they're embracing this a lot and making it be like the ideal way of society.
In the United States, do we still have a separation of church and state, or are we urged to believe a certain way?
For the most part, I believe that we are a secular country. But now I do understand that most politicians and most people are leaning toward Christianity. Although in this country, it's also obvious that we recognize holidays like Easter and Christmas as holidays that are where a lot of places are closed. But at the same time, a lot of people don't celebrate that holiday, so that may not be fair to some people in that sense.
Yeah. Some people from conservative talk shows have called leftism a religion. Is leftism a religion?
I do not believe that that is a religion. It does not have the qualities of a religion, no.
Then how would you describe it as not a religion then?
I would describe it more as a system of beliefs, political beliefs, possibly even including ethics in there as well. Yeah.
Thank you, James and John. Any parting thoughts?
Well, I would first and foremost really appreciate and thank you, Dan, for taking this initiative to do this and to be a voice into this situation, because I believe issues in our society, if we do not engage with them, we let them just be. But then when we start engaging them, we create a space where people bring in new ideas and engage the conversation, and actually those who did not know or couldn't see what is happening are able now to see and actually have a voice to have an input into a nation. And so I really believe it's a good thing. So keep up and keep going and do not stop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I do believe this is a very interesting and important way of looking at politics, where you are able to sit down and listen to both sides as to what they have to say. I think that's a very important topic. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was raised in a family that was very liberal. I was a Democrat. My whole family is Democrat. And I always thought of myself as being a fair-minded individual. And I thought, Republicans, they're all just rich people who care only about the rich, and they don't care about the rest of us. But then I met two pastors. One was a Democrat and one was a Republican. And I noticed that I had some political bigotry myself. I treated the Republican pastor with less favor. And I realized this is wrong. This is bigotry. For example, when I was going to go on the radio and talk to Dennis Prager, who I'm going to interview for this show later sometime, people with me were looking down on me because I was going to talk to a conservative. A few days later, I talked to a very conservative friend of mine, and I said, I want to be fair, I want to listen to all different sides, and he said, you're just a communist liberal. So I think I'm the only person in this country that's considered both a communist liberal and a Tea Party bigot. So my goal in A Nation Divided, a conversation with Democrats and Republicans, is to bring the art of listening back to our country. Well, thanks for joining us for the very first show of A Nation Divided, a conversation with Democrats and Republicans.